Are you owning the words that you say? Hey, everybody, I'm Pat Laurie, and I have a question for you. Could the way you say your words potentially affect your bottom line? Are you owning what you say? Do you sometimes put your foot in the mouth, say the wrong thing, and you don't know how to correct it? Well, I've got a solution for you because joining me now is Denise Page. She's a speaker, storyteller, trainer, facilitator, and TEDx speaker, and she is the master of all things correcting. Oops, did I really say that? Hey, Denise, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Pat. It's my pleasure to be here.
So let's talk a little bit about the importance of owning the words that you say. You're going to have a workshop with NSA coming up soon. What
Mhm.
inspired you to create this workshop?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked, Pat. What inspired me to create the workshop is the knowledge and the awareness that all of us, at some point in time, usually when interacting with someone who represents an identity that we don't share, we put our foot in it. We
Mhm.
don't always mean to. We often don't mean to. But when we don't have a personal relationship with other groups or other identities, that's just what we do. I mean, and I'm to give you a brief example. This, to give us context, it happens with older adults and younger people, right? And so it doesn't have to be anything as dramatic as, a different sexual orientation or a different race. It's just not your identity. And so we often find ourselves stepping in it, well-meaning people. So that's what really inspired me to do it. I saw so many of my friends who are self-employed losing business because they were saying unintentionally hurtful things, and they
Mhm.
deserve all the business that their qualities should bring them. So
And it's so hard to know what's right, what's politically correct, what's culturally responsible. So, how do we sort of like unpack that?
I'm so glad you asked, and I have the answer that I think most people don't want.
Uh
I
oh.
usually say that if I had the answer to what should I say to this person representing this group in this time, that volume would be ginormous, and I would be the richest person that ever walked the globe. Everybody wants that book. I can't write that book for my family. I can't tell you that my older brother Jimmy is offended if you say this, but my younger brother Paul prefers this. I can't write that book. And so, really, this journey is about understanding our motivation is the key to minimizing stepping in it and being prepared to own, oops, I stepped in it. And those two things alone bring us to a place where we can develop healthy relationships outside of our own identity. One point about political correctness, I do not believe in it. I'm not even sure what that means. What I do know, at the peak of political correctness, when people were trying to follow that, it shut down conversation. People were so afraid of saying the wrong thing, they said nothing at all. And if we don't speak to one another, then we can't build bridges. Being culturally responsible means saying, hmm, I don't really know anything about the group this person represents. Let me see how to enter into an authentic conversation with them. And that's the difference between the two.
So it's really taking that time to get to know what group you're speaking with. But
And
what if,
excellent.
like, how can you recognize if you've offended somebody?
Oh,
Because
well, people will usually tell you.
but
They will usually tell you, or they'll walk away. So let me
they
see if
might
I
not.
could take
Well,
you
they might just hold that within them, and then that's not good because that's creating
right.
distance and right?
Well, right, but let me take you through a scenario
Okay.
because I do think people do let us know.
Okay.
But if we're not aware or willing to own what happened, then we missed the signal when they told us, because it won't always be a verbal acknowledgement of it. So, for example, the first thing is to look at who the person represents and ask yourself questions about them, of yourself. Oh, that looks like a Pakistani person, but it might not be. And will I be offending them if I call them something else? And do I have any latent, unaddressed assumptions about who they are? And am I interested in having a conversation with them because they're an individual with whom I'd like to have a relationship, or because I'm curious about what I think they represent? If it's the latter, do not engage in a conversation.
Mhm, mhm.
One can be interested, which is way different than being curious. Like, oh, I love those outfits you all wear. Wrong.
Is
just,
it better
just
to be
wrong.
specific or
Yeah. Well, it's just, so it's what's the intent of your conversation?
okay.
No one wants, very few people want to be addressed merely for the things that make them different than the person who's addressing them.
Mm,
Almost anytime we do that, we are stepping in it, even if that person doesn't tell you. Some of us are very polite and will respond, will not chew you up and spit you out. We
mhm,
also won't bother to deepen a relationship with you, because it's just when one talks about microaggressions, that's an example of microaggressions. I'll give you an example. This head wrap I have on
okay,
is actually a piece of leftover fabric from the pants that I made that I have on.
okay,
I
okay.
have no special artistry. I don't know how any African tribe does it. I don't know anything about that. I know that there were times that I wanted to wear it to accent it. And when I do, often when I go out, a stranger will look at me and smile and say, oh, I just love the way you all do that. And I'm
Mm,
like, that's a conversation non-starter.
mm,
If you would say to me, oh, that color is gorgeous on you, and I've always been intrigued, is that that's what do you hear the difference between the
yeah.
two? And that's
Well, you're being
really
curious. Yeah, you're being curious, so you're using
mhm,
that. And so, I think a lot of times people feel like they have to be in a safe zone, and by doing
mhm.
that, they put themselves in the foot in the mouth zone, and without ill intent, really.
Right, but in intent is not what determines impact, and
Okay.
that's what I need. That's one of my major messages. Just because I didn't mean to run you over with my car and kill you doesn't make you any less dead,
Mm.
just to put it bluntly.
That is true.
So,
I
yeah,
literally a
yeah.
side note, almost saw someone run over by a bus about an hour ago, so
Oh, did you? Oh my goodness, yeah, and
it's
it would be an accident, but they'd still be dead,
but
and that's what our words do, and we think that by saying, "I didn't mean anything, therefore you shouldn't be offended," no, which
and so
might
where
bring
does
us
this
to the
happen the
second
most? I mean, I'm
part.
I'm sure this happens in many professional environments, whether you're a medical professional dealing with a patient or a
Yeah,
lawyer dealing with a client or a
exactly,
real estate agent dealing with a potential home buyer. I mean, this scenario plays itself over time and time again, right? So this
exactly.
workshop, will it address, no matter what field you're in, how to fundamentally approach people in a culturally respectful and responsible way?
Right. So here's why it addresses it. And again, and I say, and this is the unpopular answer, but it's the truth. It addresses it because one only learns to do that by doing the self work.
Mhm.
And so if you're a realtor, then when you attend my workshops, you will be hearing and experiencing the workshop through that lens of yourself in relationship to others. So that's why it really doesn't matter who one is, as long as one is authentic and genuine about wanting to be better at opening conversations and having relationships with people who are from different groups than we are, then you will have answers for you. But if you think that the answers are external, you'll walk away with the same amount of information you had when you came in. And that's one of the differences. This is internal work. It's not external.
So what has the reaction been to people that, have you taken people aside and say, "Hey, listen, if you would only say it this way, that could help," or how do
Yeah. Yes and no. Again, it's the individual taking themselves aside. I
Mhm.
give examples in the workshop,
Okay.
and so just so people have an idea, like the example I just said about my head wrap. Now,
Mhm.
in the workshop, I'll give more detail because I'm sure there are people are saying, I don't see a difference between those two things. And that's valid. So
Mhm.
in the workshop, we get to unpack it more deeply and we get to understand the difference between I'm just curious about your difference and there's a person with whom I'd like to build a relationship. Or even if the relationship, whether it's a business relationship, whether it's a personal relationship, but I know again, if we think about young people and some of the questions we ask them sometimes, like, oh my God, we call this a question, oh my God, how could you listen to that music? And then we expect them to say, oh, well, what I really admire about the music. No, that will not be happening. You didn't ask a question, you made an assumption. You said that music's horrid. You look reasonable, intelligent, like someone would have good taste. How could you listen? That was really what we meant. And we do the same thing, as you said, Pat, so right, unintentionally. And I start this by saying, let's assume that people aren't intentionally verbally abusive. We know some are. Let's assume that most people are not. That's where we
Mhm,
start.
mhm.
So,
That's
um,
good. That's coming from a neutral place where everyone can be a
exactly.
little more
Yeah, we
open-minded.
just don't know. We don't know. I mean,
We
and
don't
that's
know, but
fine.
the good news
That's
is we're
fine
gonna
not
know
to know.
about this. We're gonna
Yeah.
know a lot more about this on May 8th when you come to the NSA in New Haven to talk about this very subject. Denise Page, thank you so much for joining me just for a few minutes today, because this is such an important conversation that really needs to be expanded into a workshop with actionable ideas and examples so that we can all learn together.
Thank you, Pat. And that's exactly the way it's presented. It's not theory. You get to practice with your own life experience in a safe place, revealing only what you feel comfortable sharing. Nobody goes around and says, okay, no, tell me,
Yeah.
everybody is in a safe place where we can be brave and authentic.
Ah, love it.
So thank
Love
you
it.
for the
Love ending
opportunity
on
to
that
share
word
this.
authentic, and we will see you on May 8th, Denise.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank
Thanks.
you so much. So please join us on May 8th in New Haven. You can register for our event at nsact.org and learn about how you can, if you insert that foot in mouth, take it out, or maybe not even have that foot go in the mouth in the first place. And you know what? Your words are so important. So I hope you join us for this valuable workshop brought to you by NSA Connecticut.